Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel. Birthdays when you're a kid are all about cake, ice cream, and presents, and basically getting to be king for a day, which is just one reason why parents thank God that they only come once a year. Now, when we start getting older, when we shift into adulthood, those things are still nice, no doubt about it, but our priorities start to shift. When we get older, birthdays are more about self-reflection, looking back on the old year and renewing ourselves. Think of it maybe as a personalized new year. And as we get older, birthdays are the time when we're grateful that we're just alive and still kicking on this spinning fragment of solar driftwood. Now, with some people, we continue to celebrate their birthdays even after they're dead because their lives had such an impact on us. This can be personal, like when a widow still celebrates or remembers her husband's birthday, and sometimes it's national, like when Americans celebrate Washington and Lincoln's birthdays. Now, Washington and Lincoln, they're the only two founders/heroes whose birthdays are national holidays. Or at least they were until it was all conglomerated into President's Day so that people could get a 3-day weekend. But this doesn't mean that those are the only two birthdays of founders or heroes that Americans celebrate. Sometimes it's just a much more localized tradition. And one great example of that comes from the town of Charlottesville, Virginia, which every year since 1945 has celebrated Thomas Jefferson's birthday. Now, Charlottesville started to celebrate Jefferson's birthday in 1945 because this was part of the Jefferson Renaissance, which came about when President FDR linked Thomas Jefferson to his New Deal. Because, let's be honest, what better way to gain popular support for a whole new host of government programs than attaching them to the hip of the Apostle of Liberty? At least it was a local holiday and tradition in Charlottesville until this year. 2020 will be the first year that the town does not celebrate Thomas Jefferson's birthday. Last summer, the city council voted 4-1 to actually scrap April 13th, Thomas Jefferson's birthday, as a city holiday. And the reason for this change to the city calendar was to, you guessed it, atone for slavery and racism.
Of course!
A local deacon and activist, a man by the name of Dan Gathers, said in response to this decision, quote, "Jefferson himself was a slave owner, a racist, and a rapist. So why glorify him?" unquote. And he added by saying, "White Charlottesville wants to claim the label of progressive and moving forward and awake, but it's still very much sleepwalking through what's going on," unquote. And what's going on is the supposed continued existence of systematic oppression and racism, exemplified by such things as Dylan Roof's 2015 attack in Charleston, South Carolina, or the appropriation of a rally designated to protest the removal of Confederate war statues by Third Reich wannabes in 2017. To show off its woke bona fides, to show that it was in step with the new zeitgeist, Charlottesville has renamed parks and streets, like has happened in other parts of the South, but it wasn't enough. Thus, the decision to eradicate Thomas Jefferson's birthday as a city holiday. Jefferson was out. In its place, the city decided to create a new holiday, something called Liberation and Freedom Day, which it would celebrate at the beginning of March to commemorate the ending of slavery. Now, there are a ton of things wrong with this decision, but 3 of them stand out. The first problem is that Charlottesville really owes its life to Thomas Jefferson, and it owes its life to him in 2 important ways, with the first one being UVA. It's no secret that Thomas Jefferson was a huge proponent of education, both on general principles and as one of the key ways for a people to maintain self-government. In a letter that he wrote to a man named Littleton Tazewell in 1805, Jefferson said, quote, "Convinced that the people are the only safe depositories of their own liberty, and that they are not safe unless enlightened to a certain degree, I have looked on our present state of liberty as a short-lived possession unless the mass of the people could be informed to a certain degree." And this wasn't just some private opinion that he had and that he shared amongst friends. Oh no, this was his official position. In his first inaugural address in 1801, Jefferson said to Congress, "The diffusion of information and the arrangement of all abuses at the bar of public reason, I deem one of the essential principles of our government, and consequently one of those which ought to shape its administration." After he completed his 2 terms as president, Jefferson took an active interest in education in his home state of Virginia. And when the state legislature approved plans for a state university in 1817, Jefferson became the nucleus for that university, from the physical plans of the campus to the curriculum. Fast fact, Jefferson made UVA unique in education history. Before its founding, students who went off to higher education could concentrate in one of 3 fields: law, medicine, or divinity. At UVA, students were given a choice of 8 different fields to study in: law, medicine, mathematics, chemistry, ancient languages, modern languages, moral philosophy, and natural philosophy. Today, the University of Virginia is still an educational mecca. It is nationally recognized in several fields and is consistently ranked as one of the top 3 public universities in the country. Furthermore, it is a financial windfall. It is Charlottesville's #1 place of employment and brings in, annually, on average, $2.7 billion in revenue to the town. The second reason why Charlottesville owes its life to Thomas Jefferson is because he had the decency to build his home, Monticello, in its vicinity, turning this little town in southwest Virginia into an international tourist attraction. To cite just one example, back in 2016, Monticello took in $9.2 million in admissions alone, plus $8.7 million in retail operations. Altogether in 2016, the net profits for Monticello was $38.6 million. No Thomas Jefferson means no UVA and no Monticello. In simple gratitude, then, Charlottesville should continue to celebrate the birthday of the man who actually put them on the map and who gave them such flush lifelines. Now, I know some people are probably thinking, but Nate, Jefferson was a slave owner. Out of common decency, shouldn't Charlottesville move away from the man who treated people like personal property and instead celebrate the emancipation of those people? But here's the thing. There is no contradiction between Liberation Day, which celebrates the emancipation of slaves, and celebrating Thomas Jefferson's birthday. It is absolutely 100% true that Jefferson was a slave owner. It is also true that he was not nearly as great as George Washington in this regard. Washington, even though he owned slaves, came to the realization that slavery was morally reprehensible, which is why he put in a specific clause in his will stating that his slaves, the slaves that he owned, that he had legal jurisdiction over, would become free at the time of his death. Jefferson also came to understand that slavery was morally wrong, saying once in a letter, "I tremble for my country when I consider God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever." But he never actually did anything about it, once describing slavery as holding a wolf by the ears. You couldn't let go, and you couldn't keep holding on. A big moral failing on his part, no question about it. But here's the thing. Jefferson implicitly laid the groundwork for the abolition of slavery by being one of the leaders of the American Revolution and by writing a little thing called the Declaration of Independence. Most people might not know this because the American education system is abysmal, but the American Revolution is really the historical event that got the abolition ball moving. The American Revolution was fought for ordered liberty, for the rights of Englishmen, and for independence. And after it was all over, people began to realize the contradiction in fighting a revolution for those things while at the same time still allowing slavery. This is why after the revolution, states like New York and Massachusetts began passing laws outlawing it. In fact, American historian par excellence Gordon Wood has argued that if the American Revolution had not happened, if the 13 colonies had remained part of the British Empire, slavery might have lasted in the New World for a hell of a lot longer than it actually did. As a leader of the American Revolution, Jefferson, knowingly or not, was helping to lay the groundwork for the eventual abolition of slavery. Now, this counts double for him because he also wrote the Declaration of Independence, which was the encapsulation of the ideas and principles of the American Revolution. And, bonus point, the Declaration was also the document that was used and which was referenced to in arguments against slavery in the 19th century by such luminaries as Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Should Charlottesville practice honest history and be forthright about the fact that Jefferson was a slave owner? Absolutely. If Charlottesville wants to have a Liberation Freedom Day to celebrate the emancipation of slaves, gesundheit, go for it. But there is no reason to erase Jefferson's birthday, thus getting rid of all the good things that he did, including all the things that he implicitly did to help end slavery. Doing that is just as dishonest and ideologically hidebound as airbrushing the fact that he was a slave owner. But both these reasons pale into utter insignificance in light of the third reason, which is the continued destruction of American mythology. Mythology today is a bastardized term. When we use it, we often use it as a synonym for lies. But that isn't what mythology is. That's not what myths are. Myths, properly speaking, are just a poetic way of conveying a truth. For one example, think of the Greek myth of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. According to the Greeks, Aphrodite simply appeared one day. She rose up from the sea. The Greek word aphros, from which her name comes, literally translates into foam. This was unusual because all the other Greek gods, all the other Greek heroes, had come about from a guy and a woman doing the old devil's tango. Now, the main point of this myth was not to try to explain how one goddess amongst all the other Olympians could simply appear, could start living as a fully formed adult without a mom or a dad. No, the main point of the myth was to point out the mysterious and unexplainable origins of the two most powerful forces in the universe: love and beauty. Myth was also the source of aspiration. People wanted to be as strong as Hercules, as cunning as Odysseus, as mighty as Achilles. The people, the gods and heroes that populated mythologies, they were the original comic book characters that everybody wanted to be like. Every country, every society, every people needs a mythology. And from almost the very beginning, American mythology was rooted in the founding. Call it mythologized history. This is where we get George Washington and the Cherry Tree, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, Molly Pitcher. Most people knew that these events, or in some cases, as with Molly Pitcher, these people, were not 100% historically accurate, but they encompassed a larger truth: honesty, patriotism, and duty. But if the people who populated this American mythology are canceled because they're not considered woke enough for 21st century sensibilities, then the question becomes, since nature can't abhor a vacuum, who or what is actually going to take their place? Well, how about pedophiles for one? You might think that I'm just trying to be provocative there, but no. I wish to God I were, but no. California and New Jersey are two states that now require government schools to teach LGBTQIA+ history, so that the quote-unquote repressed chapters of American history can finally be acknowledged. And in both states, California and New Jersey, Harvey Milk features prominently, Harvey Milk being the first openly gay public official in American history, who was also a pedophile. And that doesn't come from some right-wing nutjob Jesus-worshipping conspiracy factory. That comes from Milk's own friend and biographer, Randy Schultz, who wrote in his 1982 biography that Milk had a, quote, penchant for young waifs with substance abuse problems. One of these young waifs, as Schultz described him, was 16-year-old Jack McKinley, who was desperately seeking a father figure after he had run away from home. At another point, Milk actually wrote to another 16-year-old boy, Gerald Doles, in Minnesota, and encouraged him to run away from home and come live with him in San Francisco. In addition to being a cornerstone of LGBTQ+ history, Milk has also had a commemorative stamp, an aircraft carrier named after him, and was posthumously awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama in 2009. Meanwhile, the flipping author of the Declaration of Independence can't even have his birthday celebrated and declared a local holiday by the town that actually benefits from him. What's important about all this is that a country and a culture's mythology is what gives it its animating spirit. It's what encapsulates its ideas and ideals. It's what sets the bar for private and public behavior. If the mythology changes, all these other things change as well. Today, we've basically said that people like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, some of the most prominent people in our mythology, have no place for our 21st century sensibilities, and instead they have been replaced either with monsters like Harvey Milk Or with historical nobodies like Charlie Parkhurst, whose only claim to fame was that he was actually a she, a woman named Charlotte, who lived as a man and drove a coach in old California. They now are the pillars of our new mythology, and therefore our new society. They are now the gold standard. And since people like Milk and Parkhurst are only popular because they fit into a current fad of our society, this new mythology doesn't so much inspire or elevate us. Instead, all it does is just reflect what we want back to us. Which means that we're not actually going to aspire to be greater than we are. We're not going to push ourselves. Instead, we're just going to become stagnant. And whatever you think about people like Jefferson or Washington, personally, professionally, historically, or whatever, those results are not going to be good. But what say you? Is the world big enough for us to actually critique and honor someone like Thomas Jefferson? Or do the dictates of the 21st century demand that he be erased for his mistakes and sins? And does this mean that we have to completely rewrite our American mythology? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment box below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell for notifications so that you always know when I post new videos about the culture, politics, or religion from a unique POV. And before you go, be sure to give the video a like and share it with your friends on social media. Until next time, gang, stay dangerous. Ciao.